its inception, they used to have horses, pulled the horse-drawn carriages. So they had like a carriage house with horses in the first floor. I received a message from a gentleman that is a member there, that they have quite a few things going on. I asked not to be told any of the stories because I don't ever want to go in biased, expecting certain things. So I'll tell you, it was I had chills from the beginning to the end, from the time I stepped out of the car till the time I got back into the car. Um, we got what looks to be a shadow figure on a photo that we have that I took that night, or that we took that night. Um, we got multiple orbs. We got hits on the K2. Um, and afterwards, some of the members were there and they gave me some stories. And I think it's definitely worth checking out.
Sounds awesome. Sounds like a place that we'll definitely be checking out in the near future.
Absolutely.
Also, we have on, as always, checking out the chat for me and us, actually. We have the great Chuck.
Hey,
Big Charles, how you doing?
I'm good, man. Gwen, thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you.
It's going to be an exciting show. It's I'm interested in it, so I'm just going to turn it over to you and let you do your thing, man.
All right, cool. Well, tonight you guys are in for a special treat. Tonight the topic is demonology. We'll hear some amazing stories that have been experienced by our guests. He has over 25 years of paranormal experience. I think actually over 30, actually. He gets called on regularly to assist individuals dealing with alleged malevolent paranormal phenomena or potential inhuman infestation in their homes. Please welcome Keith Johnson.
Hello there. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And he has appeared on such shows as Ghost Hunters and Paranormal State. He's also the author of the popular Paranormal Realities book series that chronicles his experience as a paranormal investigator. So without further delay, so how you doing, Keith?
I'm doing fine. How are you all?
Doing good.
Great.
Doing well.
Excellent.
Well, how are things going in Rhode Island?
Things are cold tonight. It's getting a bit chilly tonight and a little rainy, but that's typical New England weather. And I guess it suits us just fine. It wouldn't be New England without that kind of weather. So
that's a good point. Around here, it's in Central PA, it's very similar, actually. The first night below freezing.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's going to be that way here tonight, too. So get ready for winter. We get spoiled over the weekend, at least on Sunday.
Well, that's good. Demonology is a quite serious discipline. Can you explain for our guests out there unfamiliar with the science what demonology is?
Demonology is the study of demons, which are considered evil spirits. Many people consider demons to be non-human spirits. They are not the spirits of deceased humans. Very evil, very malicious, at war with God and with mankind. And it is the study of demons, and often that includes encounters sometimes with demons. It can be just research, or it can be actually studying the phenomena of demons firsthand, which is a very dangerous thing, obviously. Very potentially dangerous, yeah.
Yeah, it certainly would be. You never know exactly what you're dealing with and how powerful they could be.
This is true, very true.
What got you started in the first place?
My brother and I, when we were growing up, my brother, sister, and I, we had some phenomena in our house, things going on. Not enough to scare us from the premises, of course, but we did have some things going on. And there were different locations where I experienced strange, inexplicable phenomena as well. And of course, we were raised in a Christian household. My parents taught me a lot from the Bible, so I began reading the Bible myself. I became intensely interested in the non-human variety of spirits too, angels and demons. And I believe they did exist, and I believe they do exist. So I began studying them more and more and more. And I came to realize that a lot of the activity that people are experiencing that are supposedly ghosts are actually demonic spirits pretending to be human spirits. So I studied more and more and more, and at least from a human and biblical perspective, and I began studying the writings of Hans Holzer and also Ed and Lorraine Warren. So that's basically what got me interested and started me on this path.
Yeah, two great people in the
Certainly,
investigative world.
certainly, certainly.
Have you received any training and all by chance? So, can you tell us a little bit about your training if you did?
Well, my training is from firsthand experience and also working with Ed and Lorraine Warren and other people in the paranormal field and other people who are into demonology. Now, that doesn't mean it was a straight and easy path. It was actually, I made mistakes like everybody else. We sometimes went into the wrong places and did the wrong things and mess some things up. But basically, yes, I learned from other people and from other people's writings. I didn't actually go to school for it. I'd like to make that plain that I didn't go to attend classes at the Vatican, was sent out to learn that way. But I learned on my own and from others in the field, and that's what I always recommend to others if they're getting into the field. Please go with somebody who's and study with somebody who has had some experience rather than going into it just blindly and seeing what experiments you can do to conjure up activity, because as you said very wisely, that can be very, very dangerous.
Oh yeah. Um, your group is called Nearest. Can you tell us about the founding of the group and what it does?
Yes, New England Anomalies Research. And
Oh,
just
sorry.
like the title explains, we go not experimenting, but rather researching anomalous phenomena, anything from cryptozoology to ghostly phenomena, spirits, and people who claim that they have phenomena in their lives and in their homes. We go and usually investigate that and try to help people. It's mainly what we do is try to intervene with people who are frightened of certain activity in their homes, and we do anything from ufology to just about anything that's weird or unexplained. We try to investigate it and find an explanation for it, if there is one. Sometimes there's not always an apparent or logical explanation, as you know, in your field of study. But that's what we do basically.
All right. And their website is nearparanormal.com, correct?
That is correct. Exactly. Thank you very much. Thank you for getting
You're,
that right.
you're welcome. I wanted to make sure I did.
Mhm.
Um, and what was it? I know you're from New England. Did you get a chance to um, meet at? Well, how has it been working with Ed and Elaine Warren? Can you tell us a
Uh,
little bit about that?
yeah, that was very, very interesting working with them. My brother Carl and I first met them at a lecture at Rhode Island College. And we did explain to them that my brother and I had had some experience investigating the paranormal or parapsychology. And we were also asked by a parapsychology on campus club if we'd come and speak with them at a couple of their meetings. And we actually wound up joining that group. And working with Ed and Lorraine Warren was fascinating. It was truly fascinating because these were very, very knowledgeable people. And Ed Warren was at the time, the only recognized lay demonologist. And what I mean by that is recognized by the Catholic Church as a
Mhm.
lay demonologist. And essentially, what a demonologist obviously does a lot, but what the basic function, official function of a demonologist is to go into a situation and make a reasonable, based on experience, judgment if there is actual demonic activity going on and if church intervention is warranted. That's usually the definition of what a demonologist does. And that's exactly what Ed Warren did. Although he and Lorraine went all over the country and even internationally investigating strange phenomena, anywhere from people's own homes in New England two over in Scotland and Ireland investigating haunted castles. So they pretty much did the gamut of that. But I had the opportunity to work with them at least a few times, and we knew them as personal friends too. So that was an invaluable experience getting to work with them.
Oh, very cool. We have a question
So
from
can I
James
ask
West.
if
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gwen.
it's okay. I just was curious. Did you? I've been reading some of your books, and so I was
Oh,
kind of
thank you.
curious as to if you set out in your initial endeavors into the paranormal field. Did you set out to become a demonologist, or did that just kind of happen through some experiences you had?
Actually, it's the second one. It just came about. It happened because of various experience I've had, and a friend of mine, who was the leader of a paranormal group I was in, suggested that I began referring to myself as a demonologist. Now, this is years down the line. This is no longer when I was no longer a teenager. Obviously, this is many years down the line. But my friend suggested that I start calling myself a demonologist, and it turned out that that was very advantageous because, again, I don't claim that I'm trained from the Vatican, but or I have a certificate on my wall saying this is an official demonologist. However, it does alert people that I do have some reasonable knowledge in the subject and in the field. So often it results in a lot of people getting in touch with me, calling me, asking for my services and my wife Sandra's services, and our team, New England Anomalies Research, as well. So it's a title that points people in my direction.
Very well.
Very nice. And we have a question from James West. Go ahead if you could. Are there male and female demons? He asks.
Are there male and female demons? The answer to that would be yes. Yes, there are male and female demons. However, some of them are one and the same spirit. A certain demon can, at sometimes it will take on the attributes of male and female, both. For example, predatory spirits such as an incubus and a succubus. Now, an incubus is considered a male spirit that is a sexual predator of women. Succubus is a sexual demonic predator of males. But that could be one and the same spirit. If that's its specialty to be a sexual predator, then it could adopt male or female. But there are specifically male and female demons. They Whether that's their choice, I don't know, but some of them do go by specifically male, and some of them do go by specifically female gender.
Are any demons fallen angels?
Yes, yes. A lot of different people have different beliefs of on exactly what demons are and where they originate from. Of course, I do believe that many demons are actually fallen angels, although that is quite a powerful spirit. If it's an actual former holy angel, it still has its powers. And yes, I do believe that many fallen angels do account for demons and demonic activity. Yes, and they're usually the ones that control the situation. They're the masterminds, so to speak.
Marla Snyder asks, how do you cleanse yourself of negative energy?
We do that before going into the situation. We Certain prayers we pray for protection, such as Ephesians in the Bible, the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, where it speaks about putting on the armor of God. And if you put on the armor of God prayerfully, I do believe that demons can actually perceive this armor, even though it's figurative. I don't know how exactly they perceive it, whether they see an infrared glow or whether they just know that there is vibrations emanating. But yes, praying Ephesians 6, putting on the armor of God, that does seem to offer a great deal of protection. Sandra and I have both experienced this. And afterwards, we cleanse ourselves too through prayer and specifically pray that no attachment or demonic entity will follow us home, only that which is right and of God and of the light.
And now we're showing the books that he's written in the Paranormal Reality series, and they're available on Amazon, by the way. Being that you've been so active for so long and covered so many investigations, can you look back and maybe tell us what your first investigation was like, or first paranormal group?
My first investigation, my first paranormal group, that would be Pyro, based at Rhode Island College, Parapsychological Investigation and Research Organization. And originally, we went to historic sites and would investigate the campus at Rhode Island College. Mostly did psychic experiments, which I found to be very dangerous later on, but we do psychic experiments. But our first in-home investigation was actually the Perrin case in Harrisville, Rhode Island, which of course became known as the Conjuring. And that was our first major case. So that was a pretty heavy one for our first case.
I believe we have some pictures as well.
Yes,
that you sent to me on that one.
Yeah, that's me at the so-called Conjuring House, the farm on Round Top Road in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Yeah, that's while we were investigating there, and that's from during our first investigations at the farm on Round Top Road, and you'll see Carolyn Perrin is in the foreground. Behind her is Lorraine Warren, and behind Lorraine is Donna Eisenstadt, who was the chairperson of our group, and my brother Carl. That's my brother Carl Johnson, and that's when he and I, we're both identical twins. That's when he and I were 18 years of age.
Just a couple years ago.
Yes, right. Good. Thank you so much. That makes my night. Thank you so much for saying that. Now that is actually a skull that was used in satanic ceremonies, and I knew the practitioners personally. They actually did let me sit in on one of their ceremonies and record it, audio recorded it, and that actually was a human skull that somebody procured, a member of the team, and now it's in the Warren's Museum, Ed and Lorraine Warren Museum in Monroe, Connecticut, which Tony Spera is their son-in-law, has control of the museum pieces now. That was recently on exhibit 2 at a convention we had in Waterbury, Connecticut over the weekend in honor of Ed and Lorraine Warren, Seekers of the Supernatural. So we could actually see that skull in person.
All right. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That is a well. That's a picture of the well in the cellar of the Round Top Roadhouse, and that's an open well. There's legends of children being drowned in it, but that's just legends. There's been no research has proven that there's no evidence of that whatsoever, but it does make for a good legend, doesn't it?
Definitely does.
And it's creepy looking too.
Any well would be creepy looking, especially that'd be that old and everything too.
Mm-hmm. Recently, there was an investigator from one of the teams that investigated there. One of the members actually crawled down into it, which I didn't. It wasn't me, but somebody did crawl down into it recently.
Well, it didn't look very big, so it had to be a pretty skinny person,
right?
I would imagine.
Yeah. I don't think I'd make it myself.
I think I'd have trouble too. That's for sure. If you're just joining us tonight's Paranormal edition of From Behind Tall Trees, we're talking demonology with Keith Johnson from Near Paranormal, which stands for New England Anomalies Research. And now we're getting back to demonology. Keith, can you explain the order of demons from low to high and how they interact with people?
Demons are, well, you're absolutely right. They do seem to have a hierarchy. There are some who are in control, as I was mentioning, like the fallen angel variety. Some that are the masterminds. If it was military, they'd be the commanding officers. And that goes all the way down, various ranks, down to the foot soldiers. Now, of course, the Bible in the New Testament speaks about principalities and powers. St. Paul writes about principalities and powers. And You have to realize how powerful a spirit that is. If it's a principality, that means a prince. It's a prince over certain regions and powers. They can they can be princes and have demonic influence over entire regions, parts of countries, politics, and this is all, of course, the unseen realm. It's all behind the scenes, and you get various ranks and various powers, all the way down to the foot soldiers. Now, the foot soldiers variety, they are not the masterminds. They do not do the controlling, but they are usually the spirits that are involved in possessions, demonic possessions, and infestation. When the haunting starts, if it's demonic, the lowest variety are involved in the mayhem that goes on, all the terrible odors that may happen, the violence, the destruction of property, the frightening appearances, apparitions, and really, really oppressing people to wear people down, to make them vulnerable to possession. Now, talking about possession, that is very, very rare. It does happen, but it is a rarity. It's not something a demon cannot just force itself on somebody and possess them anytime it wants. It's a long, long process. It's actually a brainwashing process called the oppression stage. It goes from infestation to oppression, and the oppression can take weeks, months, even years for somebody to be manipulated and brought low enough where they're actually vulnerable to possession. And I do believe that was what was happening to Carolyn Perrin in the true story of the Conjuring case. She was being targeted. Usually, in a case like that, a certain, I mean, obviously will affect the whole family, but a certain individual will usually be targeted, and that was Carolyn Perrin in the Harrisville case.
Has
Great.
there been a case that, I mean, you've been doing this 25, 30 years. Has there ever been a case that has kind of haunted you over these years that you just can't put aside?
There are some cases that do haunt me, but I do try to kind of put that, in the back burner as much as possible, and try to concentrate on what's positive and family and everything, because I'm obviously I'm far from a morbid person, and I don't like to dwell on these, but you do have to take some time away once in a while. You get so immersed in certain cases that you do have to step back, because it will affect your own life. Just in any situation like that, be it whether you're dealing with somebody who's affected by mental illness or something. It's You do have to step back and take a breather now and then, and concentrate on the beautiful things and more positive things in life, like family and such as that. So there is the case, of course, the Perrin case, the Harrisville case, that always stays with me. But also, there was a case of possession that my brother and I dealt with in the 1980s, early 1980s, of a 14-year-old boy, and that's kind of stayed with me. I will never forget it. Obviously, never forget it. But you do your best to concentrate on what's positive, and try to separate yourself from situations like that as much as possible, because if you dwell in it the whole time, it's really going to affect your life in a negative way, and then you won't be good to help anybody. So
Were you able to help the boy? Oh, were
what's
you able to
that?
help the boy?
Oh yeah, yes, we did help the boy. I don't think that it was completely successful, the because we assisted in an exorcism. Now, when we were first told about this, I asked the family what religion I used. Oh, we're Catholic. We're Catholic. And so I was led to assume, and my brother believed as well, that this was going to be a Roman Catholic exorcism. And we said, well, sure, we'll assist the priest. I'd be glad to have that experience of assisting a priest, because they knew we had experience and we were close friends of the family. They were a family of Puerto Rican heritage. However, when we arrived for the exorcism, I asked, where's the priest? I looked around, and it didn't seem to be set up like a priest would, like you picture in the Exorcist. Of course, you picture the priest go in and the person is there, maybe restrained, but it was nothing like that. They had a punch bowl, and that was holy water. I thought, oh, is that the refreshments? No, that's the holy water. It had all fruit in it and everything, and candles in various places on an altar. And the boy was sitting in a chair in a semicircle. And it turned out that there was no priest. They said there's a brujeria, which was the boy's aunt. It turned out that it was going to be a Santerian exorcism. So that was not what I was prepared for. But we stayed there and we did assist. It was very, very exhausting, extremely exhausting. And I'm glad my brother and I were as young as we were at the time. It's something I would not want to be involved in now because it involved physically restraining the boy, and he could throw us around like matchsticks if there was only one of us. So it really took a lot of weight to hold him down, and he was very, very violent, screaming. He was not restrained like in The Exorcist. He was not restrained to a bed. He was up and running around, overturning furniture, smashing things, tipping over candles, and screaming horrendously. Plus, there was overt activity too. There was some paranormal activity going on as well, very obvious. And that's what we look for in cases like this. Not just what's going on, but also if it's preternatural as well. Is there any activity going on? You know, it could be somebody's mental illness. So you look for other signs such as this. And we did get quite a lot of evidence that this was an actual case of demonic possession. For example, the air, the atmosphere in the room turned noticeably sickening, very, very sickening, made you feel ill. And this was all suddenly, and it was about 5 seconds before the boy went under possession. There was a rumbling across the floor, a rumbling, and we thought it was a truck going by or an earth tremor at first, but it seemed to be going in a certain direction, one part of the floor, and it went across the floor. I felt it vibrate under my feet. The chair my brother was sitting in, which was rather, a family easy chair, it was not a small chair, began moving back across the floor with my brother in it as it reached him. And he's looking around, what's moving this? And that's when the boy, a second later, went under possession and went to the ground, started screaming and thrashing, then stood bolt upright and began swaying like a cobra. And so it was really quite a very, very strange situation to believe. Very, very violent. It was a very, very violent exorcism. Much more violent than I expected it to be. But we did get through it. And the thing is that the exorcist herself, which was the boy's aunt, who was a brujeria, she herself, towards the end of the exorcism, she stood bolt upright, and she was she was a short but very stout, heavy woman. She fell backwards into a apparent grand mal seizure, smashed the altar, and she was trembling. Then she sat up totally unharmed with a big smile on her face. Her eyes were blackened out, and she herself had gone into possession. Even though she was the exorcist, she herself became possessed. And supposedly it was the spirit of her familiar spirit. She had a little black Buddha statue that was painted black, and supposedly they said her familiar spirit, her helpful spirit, lived in that, and it had come out and taken hold of her and possessed her. So if it was a separate spirit, demons do work together, and that put a halt to the exorcism there. They said the boy was better afterwards, and he did seem much more calmed down. However, about a week after the exorcism, the family was driving through Providence, Rhode Island, where they lived. They went by a church. As soon as they went by a church, he started thrashing and screaming, went under possession again, and they had to drive the car away from there very fast until he calmed down. So, in my personal opinion, the demon wasn't totally expelled by him, from him. So, but it was quite a horrendous situation that at the time, and so that's an extreme situation we were involved with. So that does stay with me. I'll never forget that one.
How often does a person doing the exorcism become possessed like that? That can't be very common, is it?
No, that is not common at all. Very, very rarely. Me personally, that's the only time I've known that to happen, where the exorcist, him or herself, becomes possessed. However, when there is a traditional Catholic exorcism, there has to be at least one other priest assisting. There has to be assistants and another priest, because if the exorcist, for whatever reason, for health reasons or just exhaustion, for whatever reason, the exorcist cannot continue, it has to be continued by an assistant. So that's why they always have an assistant. And it can be a very, very dangerous situation anyway, physically as well as spiritually.
Okay, Randy Mahoney asks, do demons have to be invited in?
Do demons have to be invited in? Quite often they do. They often, and most of the time, where we've seen, they have been invited in through some means. If there's a spirit there that happens to be in that house, maybe somebody who had an attachment or was possessed, died in a house, that spirit somehow has the spiritual right to remain there. However, sometimes you hear some people think there's spirit activity, so they break out, of course, a Ouija board or some other conjuring device, begin communicating with the spirit, and that somehow gives them permission to come through even further. So usually it's either the law of invitation or the law of attraction. For whatever reason, a person may be very sensitive and they may attract spirits to them. We've seen that as well. Most often it's by invitation, but sometimes somebody just attracts spirits who are there. We've known families who have moved into a house where there was apparently cult activity going on, and there's people that lived there before, and they may have done animal sacrifice or some other terrible things. That invites demons in. They move out, but somebody else moves in, and the landlord doesn't tell them about the history of the house. So, because usually they're not legally bound to. So that's how people can come in contact with demonic cases and such like that. But that's usually the law of attraction. Most often the law of invitation.
All right, Vincent Richardson wants to know, have you ever dealt with Gaucher spirits, I believe is the pronunciation?
Yes, wish spirits. Yes, um, I may have at one time, but those kind of spirits usually are in the background. They're usually very anonymous and they won't reveal themselves. So it's very possible I have, but I haven't actually had one declare itself to be a Goetia. And usually they are like, the fallen angel variety. They stay in the background. They do not reveal themselves. They orchestrate, because the more you know about these spirits, the more power you may have over them. So they will not. They're very hesitant about giving their names. Usually, when they give their names, it'll be a false name. They'll just make up something, or it will be derivative of what they do, what their specialty is. But it is possible I have dealt with a Goetia spirit, but if I did, it was anonymous at the time, and probably I didn't directly deal with it.
What are the signs? Okay. James West wants to know, is there a way to destroy a demon?
There is no way to destroy a demon. There is a way to spiritually contain them through prayer and supplication. And I believe it's not our power that's doing it. It's the power of God, Almighty God, that is containing the demon or restricting him. You can restrict demons through prayer and supplication, usually on a temporary basis, but there is actually no way for humans to destroy a demon. That would only be through God's power Himself. These
Okay.
are immortal beings, of course.
Oh, I'm sorry. What?
I was just saying these are immortal beings. They're not finite like us. They're not limited, and they have the wisdom of the ages because they've been around a lot longer than we have.
That's definitely true. Again, James has another question. Where do demons go once exorcised?
That's a very good question. Very good question, by the way. Quite often it's a mystery where they go when they're exorcised, but usually as soon as they're exorcised, they go into a place of torment, and they will do anything to escape this. I believe this is another dimension. They go into another dimension where they may perceive our world, but they're trapped in another dimension. It's a very it's hard to describe, and we know very little about it. But the Bible says, Jesus Himself said, when a spirit is cast out of a man, it wanders through dry places, seeking rest and finding none. I believe they go through a place of torment that is very dry and arid, and There's instances in the Bible of that too, when Jesus cast multiple demons out of an individual. They begged him, "Not, please do not send us out. Don't send us out of the land, please. Send us into a herd of swine, anything, but please don't send us out." And so Jesus did allow them to go into the herd of swine. But they do seem to go into a place of spiritual torment, and they will do anything to get another body, because that's the only way they can find peace. That's the only way they can express themselves usually, is through a body, because they're incorporeal. Demons do not have a physical body unless they are fallen angels. Fallen angels do have a spiritual body, but many demons are just spirits without bodies. They will do anything to escape that torment and to again get a physical body.
So, what would the signs be of a demonic infestation if you're having an issue?
A demonic infestation, again, very, very good question. That signs of a demonic infestation begins usually like a typical, what people think of as a typical haunt. Things are missing. You come in and the bed's unmade, or the bed has been made for you. There's furniture moved about, cold spots, and very, very strange feeling like you're being watched. However, there's if it's a demonic infestation, there are signs. Most of the signs, the most common sign is something comes in threes. There'll be three knocks, or three poundings on a wall. Things will be set up in threes. That's an insult to the Holy Trinity, and that's a demonic calling card. You'll hear three knocks on the front door, such as that. Also, things tend to go from counterclockwise. They tend to go backwards in a backwards motions. Things come in from the left and such. So those are typical signs. There'll be cold spots. And there's a rule: demons have to announce their presence. When they start an infestation, they have to announce their presence. It doesn't mean somebody's always going to recognize it, but they have to announce their presence. Ed Warren dealt with one case where somebody reported there was a songbird, a strange songbird, although they never saw it. At certain times of the night, it would start singing outside, right outside the window, disturbing the family. And then that stopped after a while, but it will have to announce itself in some form.
Interesting.
Mhm.
How often do you get called in to deal with a possible demonic situation?
Uh, I believe we do quite often. Um, Quite often we have somebody. It's seems to be just a routine investigation. We'll give them advice on how to defend themselves and prepare against this going further. But see, it's my personal belief, and I know a lot of people would disagree, but it's my belief that a lot of these haunting uh, phenomena, a lot of this haunting phenomena is actually demonic, and it's disguising themselves as humans. They're disguising themselves as human spirits. So what may seem human, uh, I believe, often is demonic. And we do tests for this too, very, very carefully, very, very carefully. I mean, we don't go provoking right away, very, very, deep provoking. We try to avoid provocation, but even a prayer, even praying over somebody, can be considered provocation. So we're very, very careful with that. But if we see an overt reluctance in prayer, or somebody is very, very, they hate religious objects, they've got an aberration for anything religious, anything talking of God, that could be, or again, the three knocks, we question the family, what have they experienced so far? And quite often it will point to the telltale signs of the demonic.
All right. Randy asks, do you ever call on St. Michael to help you?
I personally do not. I personally do not. I understand that a lot of people do, and they feel very comforted by the Saint Michael prayer, Saint Michael defend us in battle, and so on. Um, and that's fine. I know a lot of people are comforted by that. I ask what I do instead of praying directly to angels. My wife Sandra and I will ask God, if it is your will, please send protecting angels for us. Please send the forces of Saint Michael to defend us. And we pray, ask God, we ask Jesus to send protective angels rather than invoking angels directly, because I personally believe that's not our place to do that.
What's the most intense location you've investigated?
Most intense location, I would say, is at the time it was the Perrin House, the Harrisville house, because that was very, very active when the Perrin family lived there. So that was extremely active. However, another location that we've been to was the Ladd Center in Exeter, Rhode Island. That's a former institution, extremely infested, extremely dark, very, very ominous, and dangerous too, because it was a series of abandoned buildings. Many people did experience negative activity there. However, most of those buildings are torn down. Virtually all of them are torn down now. The land has been landscaped, so the institutional buildings are no longer there. But that was extremely, for many years, many investigators went there. That was an extremely dangerous and very, very active place.
Can you tell us about one of your most unusual encounters?
One of my most unusual encounters, gee, there's been many of them, but you know, one of the most unusual encounters was I would say, a case in Lewiston, Maine, where there was an older woman who said she was going under possession, and she said that she asked us to go up. This is when I was a member of the Atlantic Paranormal Society, and our friend Brian Hanwar was also a member, and Sandra and I went up there to Lewiston because she said, well, I do go into possession, but I don't think it's going to happen tonight because hasn't happened for 2 weeks. But they asked if we could do a house blessing. So I did a house blessing, and that provoked the possession. She went under possession that very night, and very, very strange. She was claiming to be a spirit of a dead French Canadian gentleman who had been buried. His grave had been violated. He'd been buried in the cellar, and that's what she was. Who had lung disease. He died of lung disease. But I gradually used wording, so I began using religious terms very carefully. For example, well, if you're from the afterlife, do you ever see angels there? And immediately she got very defensive. The spirit seemed to get very defensive, and I asked, do you ever see Jesus? Finally, I said, do you see Jesus? And she starts getting very angry and saying, get the devil away from me. And finally, I said, well, in the name of Jesus, are you a human spirit? She said, no. And I said, what kind of spirit are you? And she screamed out, the devil, and became very, very violent. Although she did not, fortunately, get up to attack us, but she became very, very animalistic and very bestial. And that was a very strange situation. Another one was in Maine too, Skowhegan, Maine, where we went up as a group with the Atlantic Paranormal Society, and that had been a situation where we saw signs of cult activity written on the wall and animal cruelty in a house that this family was renting, and apparently the former occupants had done some things they really shouldn't have been delving in, and that was very, very much infested. And it's strange. It was very strange because one of our team members had his video camera going on upstairs, just stationary. We were downstairs, and all of a sudden we heard a door slam. We heard a door slam from upstairs. Some of our investigators went upstairs, and they didn't find anything. So the next afternoon, we were reviewing our evidence. We played the tape, the recording of when that slam happened, and we heard the door slam. And all of a sudden, before the investigators get upstairs to respond to the door slam, we heard a little girl's voice say, they're coming. And then a deep male voice said, they're here.
Wow.
Then you see the investigators on the recording enter the room, look around, and eventually go downstairs. That was very, very strange. And it really seemed to be personalizing us and speaking like that. That was extremely unnerving to hear something like that.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
what is your take on Ouija boards and Divic boxes and things of that nature?
I think they can lead to danger. I think they can be considered an invitation. Now, as far as Ouija boards, Divic boxes, I think perhaps as much as 90% of the time, it is our own subconscious giving us the answers. Like we're doing divination, and yet I think a lot of times, a woman that does tarot cards explained this to me. She said people are finding the answers themselves. It's just that's a catalyst, and you're actually
Mm.
answering and finding the and your own abilities. You're finding the answer. I think most of the time when people do divination through the rods or through the Ouija board or divot box, they're finding the answers themselves subconsciously, and I think it's the subconscious impulses that are moving the planchette, say on the Ouija board. But there's always that 5 to 10% where somebody's going to be very, very sensitive, and the demonic spirit is going to pick up on that and take advantage of that vulnerability and attach themselves to it. And we've seen people get in big trouble. I've even seen that happen with my own family many years ago, family members using the board. And it did seem it to give it permission to really move in and start some disturbing activity.
If you're just joining us tonight, again, we have I'm from Behind Tall Trees. We have Keith Johnson. If you got any questions, feel free to ask. Please put in capital letters. And also now we're going to get Keith. You've written an entire series of books on the paranormal. Can you tell our viewers about the series?
The series is Paranormal Realities. It's a compilation of true stories based on true stories. Most of them are things I've really experienced. My team members have gone through with us, and people who were interested and fans of the original Ghost Hunters. Well, they might find these stories interesting because a lot of the stories are things that happened before the advent of the TV show Ghost Hunters. It's what we did as a team before anybody became famous, before anybody was really well known. We were just a bunch of people sincerely trying to help others. And so it gives some insight into what some of these characters did, like Jason and Grant and Brian and Sandra and myself, my brother Carl. Some of the cases we were on, such as the Skohegan case, before the TV show, when we were more free to do our own thing and we didn't have the constraints of a TV show. And some of them are based on local folklore, but things we've investigated and try to pick apart the reality. So that's basically what they are. And investigators who are interested in investigating and doing deliverance, helping families, will find them very interesting because they can be used kind of like a handbook as well. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but it's basically a guide. It's saying how we did things and how we handle things. Uh, Often successful, not always successful, but as I'd like. But it tells the true stories of these things.
Sure. Certainly, no one has all the answers as far as the paranormal goes. That's for certain.
Right.
There's
That
no
is
way.
very, very true. Very true. Me especially. I don't have all the answers.
Any books you read when you were young that got you started, or that you were interested in, or when you first started investigating?
I found well, my brother and I would take books about demons from libraries and different things, like especially one from the 19th century, History of the Devil by Daniel Defoe. It's a very, very rare book, but my grandmother happened to have a copy of it. And my brother still has a copy, History of the Devil by Daniel Defoe. And of course, wrote Robinson Crusoe. But and of course, the Demonologist. That's a very interesting book. I would highly recommend that by Gerald Brittle, the Demonologist, which is the story of Ed and Lorraine Warren and many of their really intense cases. It's if you're new to this, it can be very, very disturbing reading about these cases for the first time. But I would highly recommend that. That's full of good information. And some of the cases I've been on, like again the Perrin case, it's why I think that was actually demonic in nature. Some people would disagree, but I think it was actually demonic. I don't think it was Bathsheba Sherman haunting the house. I think it was a demonic spirit. For example, Andrea's younger sisters were upstairs in a bedroom, and they were telling me, and this is when I was only 18 years old, they were telling me how afraid they were of this spirit in particular, one evil spirit in particular. And I asked them, do you have any religious beliefs? And they said, oh, yes, we're Catholic. So I suggested calling upon Jesus to them. As soon as I said the name of Jesus, all heck broke loose in that room. There was the air became very, very difficult to breathe. You felt very nauseous, like energy was being pulled out of you. But this was all in a split second. There was a window next to my right shoulder that could not be closed because of the August humidity. Roger, their father, had even taken a hammer to it and he couldn't close it. It was just too swollen. Well, when I said the name of Jesus, that slammed shut very, very quickly. Very, is all this was happening within a second. And Nancy, one of the daughters, was sitting on the bed. She got slapped on the left side of the head. Again, left side of the head. That's an indicative of the demonic. Her hair went up. She was started screaming and crying that she'd been hit. But I kept calling upon the name of Jesus, and suddenly it left the room. Everything got cleared up. Didn't leave the house, but for that moment, it left the room. So that shows, and that's not to my credit. That's because there's power in the name of Jesus. So I was always convinced that the main spirit in that house that was possibly controlling other spirits was a very high demonic.
Oh wow. Now you also have a YouTube channel.
Yes.
Ghosts R and the letter R is how it's done. Near Show.
Right, exactly.
Can you tell us a little bit about the show?
That's a paranormal talk show, and usually it's not very frightening or horrendous because it's usually in a studio setting where we interview other investigators or authors or anybody that has an interesting story, or even getting more and more into like abductees, UFO abduction experience, or maybe a Bigfoot experiences. Certainly, we would interview people about that. However, we do also go out in the field and we show cases where we are doing interventions and investigations, and that can be a little bit scary when you go out in the field and are actually something. As you know, we all know in this field, a lot of times nothing will happen. It's just waiting for something to happen and then reviewing evidence afterwards. But every once in a while, that something will happen of an unexplained nature, and that can really be unnerving at times. But that's our show. Ghosts are near. That's what we do.
Very nice, and you're right. It's very rare, but every once in a while, something really off the wall crazy does happen during an investigation.
Yes, and certainly dealing with a creature like a Sasquatch can be very, very unnerving. We have that I've never seen it, but supposedly we have one here in Little Rhode Island. And my brother gave it the name of Big Rhodey because we're often called Little Rhodey, so he gave it the name Big Rhodey. So that kind of stuff. That's our Rhode Island Bigfoot.
Okay, can you name some of the more popular paranormal TV personalities you've had on your show?
We've had Jason Hawes. We've had his daughter Satori on as well. The next generation, coming up and investigating, and her boyfriend Cody Ray is a good friend of ours. Dustin Parry, Brian Hanwar, and Ryan Buell, of course, of Paranormal State, and we're going to shortly have Tony Sparrow on because we did a convention recently and him speaking, and Arnie Johnson as well, who figured in the Devil Made Me Do It, the true story, actually. I know that The Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It, but we're going to have the real one of the real characters on. And we've had a lot of good people on and a lot of interesting people who have investigated and have their own stories.
All right. Well, the hour has flown by, and I'd like to thank Keith for coming on with us. We'd love to have you back again. As you know from the outline I did, there was a lot more material we didn't have a chance to get to in the time.
A big field of study. So
absolutely, but we had a lot of great questions come in from the chat. Thank you, chat, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Keep us posted on your upcoming adventures, and hopefully you'll come back with us next year if you don't mind. We'd love to have you back again.
I would love to. Thanks. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on tonight.
It's been our privilege. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. If you liked what you saw tonight, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you got any questions for me or the CARC, you can email us at carcgroup@gmail.com. Coming up next time from Behind Tall Trees, we're back talking Bigfoot with guest Squatch Detective Steve Calls in studio. November 16th, right here on Beyond Explanation. We'll see you there. That's it for me. Good night. Play us out, Bill.
Good night.
Good night from Behind Tall Trees. If you enjoyed the previous program, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment.